Hey there Dev Squad, Virtus here and welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 Endless Runner tutorial series. In today's video we're going to be showing you how you can set up a magnet pickup item within your game. So the magnet is going to work very similar to the way that it will do in Subway Surfers. What I mean by that is when you have the magnet active, it is going to pull the coins towards you from the other lane. So they're going to be sort of sliding and sweeping over into your body so you don't actually have to physically touch them. So we're going to be setting up a static mesh which you're going to be able to pick up and then that is going to be attached to your body. So before we go any further, you guys need to make sure you've got the latest version of the Endless Runner files, as within there is a magnet static mesh. And I need you guys to import this into your content browser under runner files, meshes, and then all you've got to do is just click, drag and drop to import that into your content browser. For all of the import settings, just press import, leave those exactly as they are at the moment, and what you should have is the horseshoe looking magnet that looks just like this. Now what we're going to do with this is we've been given a couple of materials. We've got the magnet white and we've got the magnet red. At the moment I am happy with the way that they look, however I do want it to have a slight glow, so I'm just going to open up the magnet red to start with. And then within here, all I'm going to be doing is adding in a constant free vector into the emissive color, and this emissive color is what's going to give it that glow. So at the moment you can see it's just a very sort of basic red. All I'm going to be doing is in the red section here in the details panel, from within my constant free vector, I'm going to set this to 15, and what this is going to do is just give it a nice bright glow. Maybe 15 is a little bit too much, so I'm going to set this down to something like 10, and that is going to be nice and bright just the way that I want it to. Now bear in mind it's going to look a little bit orangey because of the fact that it's sort of a bright light sort of shining out of it, but for now that will do what I need it to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and press apply. And then once I've done this, I can close this up and I can actually open up my static mesh here for my magnet to see how this is going to look. And for me, I am happy with that. So what I'm going to do then is start working on the functionality. So first things first, we need to have a pickup asset for this magnet. And the easiest way for me to do this is to actually copy the coin pickup that I've got here by just going to my blueprints folder, right clicking the coin pickup and hitting duplicate. And the name for this is going to be magnet underscore pickup. And then all I'm going to do within here is change up some of the code and change up the static mesh. So going into the viewport tab, I'm going to go to the static mesh, and then for the static mesh we're going to set this to magnet, and you can see me doing this in the right hand side in the details panel. Notice at the moment it's upside down, so I'm just going to flip that. So I'm going to rotate that 180 degrees, and what you should have is something that looks a little bit like this. Go into our event graph, and what we need to do in here is delete all of the code that we have got already, and we're going to be writing this ourselves. Now the way the code for this is going to work is within our third person character we're going to have a variable, and that variable is just going to tell the engine whether or not the magnet is active. And then once it is active, and if they run over an outer shell of a coin almost, it's going to come towards them. If it's not active, it's just not going to fire off the code. You'll see exactly what I mean by that as we go throughout the video. So first of all, what we've got to do then is go into our third person BP folder, blueprints, and open up our third person character so we can create that variable telling the game whether or not the magnet is active. So within here, bottom left hand corner, add a variable, and we're going to give this the name magnet active. And then go ahead and compile this and make sure your default value is unticked, so it's untrue, because you don't want the player to start the game with the magnet active. And then Make sure this is a boolean as well, as you do want it to simply be a true or false value. From here we can go ahead and close the character blueprint, we don't need that anymore, and what we need to do from there is go back into our magnet pickup within runner files and blueprints. Within here, once you overlap the character, we're going to tell it to change that value, the variable, the boolean, to true. And the way we're going to do this is event begin overlap with the third person character. We are going to be telling it to set magnet active to true. And then what we're going to do from there is we are going to be destroying the actor so it disappears, and then we're going to be running a quick delay of about however long that you want your magnet to be active for. In my case, I'm going to set this to 10 seconds. For 10 seconds, and then after that we are simply going to be copying and pasting this magnet active and setting this to untrue, and make sure your as third person character is still hooked up to your target here. So your code should look exactly the same as this. So just to confirm, once you overlap this magnet, what we're going to be doing is setting the magnet active variable to true, so the engine knows we have just picked up a magnet. We're going to destroy this actor so you can no longer see it, have a delay of 10 seconds so the magnet stays active for 10 seconds, and then switch it off. So if we go ahead and compile this, we should be good to go. What I'm also going to do is quickly add in a couple of print strings between where we're actually changing the magnet active state, just so we know that it is working. So in string after magnet active is going to just say magnet active. Over at the end here, after we turn it off, we're going to print another string saying magnet inactive, just so we know for testing purposes. So what we've now got to do is start placing these into our level. So first of all, I'm going to test it just to make sure it works. So I'm just going to place it in my scene, sort of about there, and we should be able to run into it. Now, it's not the best of ways to place it in here if we just sort of place it randomly, because you're not necessarily going to be able to get to it. So what I am going to do instead is incorporate it into our sort of randomly spawning system. So the way I'm going to do this is open up my master tile, and then you've got our 3 lanes here and what can potentially spawn. What I'm going to do is copy and paste the spawn actor node, and within here we're going to set this to the magnet pickup, and we're just going to add a pin on the switch on int, hook this up to the spawn transform we've got already, and then just link it up so we know everything works. For our maximum random integer in range, set this to 4. Do the same thing on all of those, and all we're doing is just adding in these extra pins, and then we're just copying and pasting the code to spawn in that magnet. And what you should have by the end of things is something that looks just like this. So what you're doing, each of these 3 lanes, setting the spawn transform, adding in the pin to the switch on int, setting your random integer in range, and making sure the magnet pickup is good there, and then just link it up to the next lane if you haven't done so already. By the end of it, if you go ahead and compile this, you should have no errors. Hit play and hit restart. You're going to see that it's going to be spawning a lot of magnets, and that's simply because we haven't really set up any weighting. We haven't controlled sort of when it shouldn't, or how often it should spawn. At the moment it is just completely random between the 4 obstacle types. It is currently down as an obstacle. You can see there in my top left hand corner of the screen though that it is setting the magnet active which is pretty much exactly what I wanted it to do. And then after a short little piece of time, it is going to make it inactive. So now for the actual code where we get the coin to come into the center of the player, and this is going to be where it gets a little bit more complicated, but if you do have any issues, just slow the video down, listen to what I'm saying, and you shouldn't have any problems. Now, the way we're going to be writing this code is it's all going to be within the coin pickup. Go over to your viewport tab, and what we're going to be doing is adding in a secondary collision for this coin. This secondary collision is going to be quite wide, and it's going to fit the 3 lanes. So when you get close to this, anywhere within the 3 lanes, it's going to come towards you. And the way I'm going to add this secondary collision is by adding a component, and then the component type is going to be a sphere collision. Now the center of this needs to be on your coin, so drag that up there, and then for the scale, we're going to set this to 15 by 15 by 15, and you can see this should be quite a wide sort of cover here. And what you really want to be doing is dragging this coin pickup into your scene so you can see roughly how wide it is in comparison to our lanes, and I think that is going to be just fine. So I'm going to delete this from our scene, we don't need this anymore. Now what we need to do is work on the code. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to create a begin overlap event on the sphere. So the sphere is going to be separate to the rest of the code, so that's if the magnet is not active. So with the sphere, create a begin overlap event in the details panel from the right there. And when it overlaps the character, so cast to third person character, we are going to tell it to run a timeline, which is sort of going to be a pseudo animation. So what I'm going to do from here is add in a timeline, so add timeline, and make sure this is hooked up to play from start. Within this, what we're going to do is open it up and add a vector track. Now the track for this is just going to be called slide because we're trying to slide over the coins. For the length of this, we're going to set this to 2, and then as for the values, we're going to leave these to 0, so we are going to compile this. That is all we need to do for the timeline. Go back into your event graph and we're going to start working on the code. On update, we are going to set actor location, and the location for this is going to be something that we're getting from the original location and also using the timeline to sort of slide that over. So you'll see what I'm doing in just a second. So the original location is simply going to be get actor transform. Within here we can break this transform and we can use the location from this, and then we can hook this up into a vinterp2 to help us control that slide. Now for the other location, which is going to be the target over here, we're going to use get player character and then get the actor location to give it that target location. And then for the delta time, we're going to hook this up to get world delta seconds. And then for the interp speed, we're going to set this to something like 15. And this is going to be what you're going to be using to control how quickly it's going to slide into the character. You'll see that a little bit better in a moment once we actually have it working. For the slide, what we're going to be doing with this is vector plus vector to add in the timeline information to the vinterp information and hook this up into the new location. Hit compile, there shouldn't be any errors, and what we're also going to do is just before this timeline, we are going to check to see whether or not the magnet is active, because we don't want to be sliding it in like a magnet if they haven't picked up the magnet. So the condition is going to be coming from the third person character. So get magnet active and hook this up into the condition. So if that's true, then do that. If it's not, do nothing, and from there you can just run the ordinary normal code for that. So what I'm going to do now is compile this and test it out. So I'm going to restart. I'm going to pick up the magnet, and what you should see is that our coin very quickly is being destroyed. And the reason for that being destroyed is simply because it's just too quick for us to see. And half of the issue is that we've still got our other line of code in there. So what I'm going to do is open up my coin pickup, break these top two links here at the start, just for now. I'm going to scroll down, make sure my vinterp speed is something reasonable, which should be 15. Time over here should be 0. And our length of the timeline should be 2. Hit compile, hit play, pick up a magnet, and then you can see now it is starting to slide into the player. It's working like a magnet. It is picking up those coins. Now notice it's not actually collecting those coins, and the reason for that being that it is simply just not colliding or overlapping with the player, and we haven't really got any code to tell it to do what it needs to do. So what I'm going to do is within here, if I open up my coin pickup, go into my event graph, and then after it has done all of this, so the way I'm going to do this is not by hooking it up to set actor location, because it's going to be running that over and over and over and over again. Instead, what I'm going to be telling this to do is, if it is true, we are going to be using the sequence node to first of all add 1 point to, or 1 coin to the character. So hook this up into the then 0, and then the then 1 should be going into this. Hit compile, and you're going to notice it's not working. For your object wildcard, for the cast to third person character, we don't need that anymore, so we can just move this along just like that. Hit compile, hit play, and now if we give it a go, we should be able to pick up those coins, and it is doing its thing. Now notice it is still destroying them a little bit too quick, so what I need to do is go into my coin pickup, and then just before it does destroy actor, you want to add a delay of about 1 second. With this 1 second delay, hit compile, hit play. And what this is going to do is take a moment before it destroys that coin. And now, as you can see, our magnet system is working exactly as it should. So what we're going to do now then is just make sure that these coins are going to be able to be picked up even when the magnet isn't active. Because at the moment, the only collision that we have and the only code that we have within here that is actually working is for when the magnet is picked up. And what you'll also notice, it's not always picking up every coin on all 3 lanes, so I'm just going to also make my sphere within my viewport a little bit bigger. So I'm going to set this to 25 by 25 by 25. Go to my event graph, and we are going to figure this out. So we've got our code right there for when the magnet is active. Now, if it's not, we need to set up the event begin overlap over here for when it's not, and that's only going to be when you touch the static mesh in itself. So because event begin overlap is covering the whole actor, this is not going to work for what we need it to do. Instead, we're going to use the static mesh, get a reference to that, and do a begin overlap event for this instead. Down here, what we're going to be doing is casting to the third person character And then as the third person character, we need to tell it to increase the points. Now if you remember, the points are, or the coins rather, are stored in the game mode, so we are then going to cast to third person game mode. Object wildcard should be get game mode, and then as third person game mode, set coins, and then all we're going to do is integer plus integer as game mode, get the current, or get the coins, and all we're doing is just adding 1 to that. What we're also going to be doing is destroying the actor afterwards, so destroy actor, and what this should do now is, even if we don't have a magnet picked up, so the best way to do this is to just try and run the course and not pick up a magnet, and you can see now that it is doing its bit. So let me just test that again. So pick up that coin, pick up another one, 3, 4, and every time I pick one up, it is going to be doing its thing. However, what you might have an issue with is with our magnet, it is going to be picking up 2 for each coin. And the reason why it's doing that is because it is firing off both of these if the magnet is active. And there is a way for us to get around this. And the way that we're going to do this is, first of all, what we're going to be doing is after it's added the point over here, so just before, so after it's added the point over here, what we're going to be doing is adding in a variable, and we're going to be giving this name used. This is going to be a boolean. So with this, we're going to be setting used to true. And that bit there is done. This is the code for when they touch the center, and what we're going to be doing with this is running a branch check to see whether or not this coin has already been used. If it hasn't, and that is false, it's going to add the point. If it's true, I'm going to tell it to do nothing. Hit compile, let's test this out, and from here it should work. So pick up a magnet, and then we should eventually get to another coin, and you've got one here, and hopefully it's only going to add the 1 point. And there we are. You can see that our magnet is working exactly how I wanted it to. Now there is still lots of magnets within our scene, you're not going to have that many in there, but that is going to be something we'll be controlling with weighting a little bit later on in the series. When I say weighting, there's going to be more chance of obstacles spawning than there is magnets. Anyway guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I know it has been a bit of a long one. There is a lot of code involved in writing this little magnet pickup, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it either way. Once again guys, thanks for watching, stay awesome, keep creating, your boy Vertus, signing out.
This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon. If you want more videos like this, check out my Patreon page using the link in the description. To stay up to date on new releases, make sure you follow us on social media.